Some psychological patterns begin quietly, in small shifts in emotion long before the mind is able to admit what's happening. There's a moment, brief and often unnoticed, when you cross the threshold into a crowded space and something inside you contracts. Your chest tightens. Your breathing changes rhythm. Your eyes scan without permission, cataloging exits, counting bodies, measuring distance. This isn't a choice you make. It's a response that happens to you, as automatic as blinking, as involuntary as your heartbeat accelerating when you sense danger. And yet, there is no danger, just people, just noise, just the ordinary chaos of human beings existing together in the same physical space. So why does your nervous system treat a shopping mall like a threat? Why does a concert feel like suffocation? Why does walking into a busy restaurant trigger the same alert system that would activate if you were standing at the edge of a cliff? These aren't random reactions. They're not signs of weakness or antisocial tendencies or some fundamental brokenness in your character. They're information. Your body is speaking a language you haven't learned to translate yet, sending signals about safety and overwhelm that your conscious mind dismisses as irrational. But nothing the nervous system does is irrational. Every response has a reason, every contraction a cause, every moment of discomfort a deeper story waiting to be understood. If you enjoy deep psychological insights into human behavior, feel free to subscribe. Let's explore this more deeply. You walk into a crowded place, and immediately, before thought can intervene, you feel it. The walls seem closer than they are. The air feels thinner. Sound becomes texture instead of information. A wall of noise pressing against your skin. You're suddenly aware of your body in space, hyper-conscious of how much room you're taking up, whether you're in someone's way, whether you're being watched or ignored or judged. Your mind begins a calculation it never agreed to perform. How long until you can leave? What excuse would sound believable? Whether anyone would notice if you slipped out now? This is the experience of someone who hates crowded places. But hate isn't quite the right word. Hate implies choice, preference, a considered judgment about something you've evaluated. This is more primal than that. It's aversion. It's your entire system saying no before your thoughts can form yes. It's the feeling of wanting to crawl out of your own skin because the one you're in doesn't feel safe anymore. And here's what makes this so confusing. You look around and see other people who seem fine, more than fine. They seem energized by the very thing that's draining you. They're laughing, moving through the crowd with ease, their bodies loose and open while yours is tight and closed. You wonder what's wrong with you. Why can't you just relax? Why does something that appears so simple for everyone else feel so impossibly difficult for you? You've probably labeled yourself by now. Introvert, antisocial, hermit, someone who just prefers quiet. And maybe those labels feel true, but they're also incomplete. Because what you're experiencing isn't just about preferring solitude over socializing. It's not about being shy or awkward or uncomfortable with people. You might be perfectly fine one-on-one. You might be warm and engaged in small groups. You might even enjoy certain kinds of social interaction. But put you in a crowd, and something fundamental shifts. The rules change. The experience becomes something else entirely. This matters because this aversion shapes your life in ways you've stopped noticing. It determines which jobs you can tolerate, which invitations you accept, which experiences you allow yourself to have. It influences how others see you, how you see yourself, how small or large your world becomes. And beneath all of it lies a question you may have never directly asked. What exactly is your nervous system trying to protect you from in a room full of strangers? What ancient alarm is sounding when there's no visible threat? What does your body know that your mind hasn't admitted yet? The answer lives in the oldest parts of your brain, in structures that were forming long before language, long before civilization, long before human beings built cities dense enough to pack hundreds of strangers into a single room. Your amygdala, that small almond-shaped cluster of neurons buried deep in your temporal lobe, operates on a simple principle: scan for threat, assess for danger, prepare the body to respond. It doesn't think. It doesn't rationalize. It doesn't care about social norms or modern convenience, or your conscious desire to just enjoy a concert like a normal person. It has one job, and that job is keeping you alive. And when you walk into a crowded space, your amygdala lights up like a warning system detecting fire. But why? What threat does it perceive in a grocery store on a Saturday afternoon? The answer is sensory overload, and it's more than just feeling overwhelmed. Your brain is receiving more input than it can efficiently process. Every face is a data point requiring analysis. Every voice is a frequency demanding attention. Every movement in your peripheral vision triggers a micro-assessment: friend or threat, predictable or chaotic, safe or dangerous. In a crowd of 200 people, your nervous system is attempting to track 200 potential variables simultaneously, and it simply doesn't have the bandwidth. Imagine trying to have 200 conversations at once, trying to monitor 200 screens simultaneously, trying to solve 200 equations while someone keeps adding new numbers. That's what your brain is attempting in a crowded environment, and the result is cognitive exhaustion before you've even been there 10 minutes. This wasn't always a problem. For the vast majority of human history, our ancestors lived in small tribes of 50 to 150 individuals. The human brain evolved to recognize and remember faces, to track social dynamics, to maintain relationships within groups small enough to know everyone's name. We're designed for intimacy, not anonymity. We're wired for communities where every person matters, where every interaction carries weight, where you can predict behavior because you know the person's history. A crowded mall violates every principle your evolutionary programming holds sacred. It presents you with more strangers in 1 hour than your ancestors would have encountered in a lifetime, and your nervous system has no template for processing this safely. Some people's brains handle this better than others, and this isn't a moral judgment or a measure of strength. It's neurobiology. There's a concept in psychology called sensory processing sensitivity, and it describes people whose nervous systems are simply more responsive to stimulation. They notice subtleties others miss. They pick up on emotional undercurrents that pass beneath most people's awareness. They process information more deeply, which means they also reach capacity more quickly. If you're wired this way, a crowded space isn't just mildly uncomfortable. It's genuinely painful, an assault on a system that's already operating at maximum sensitivity. Where someone else might filter out 90% of the sensory input and focus on what's relevant, you're receiving and attempting to process all of it. The fluorescent lights aren't just bright, they're stabbing. The background music isn't just noise, it's intrusive. The smell of perfume and food and cleaning products isn't just present, it's overwhelming. You're not being dramatic. You're not being weak. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's designed to do, just at a higher volume than most people experience. And here's the part that complicates everything. This biological response doesn't exist in isolation. It's layered over years of personal history, over early experiences that taught your brain what to expect from overwhelming environments. Because while your amygdala might be ancient, the specific things that trigger it are learned. Something happened in your early years that made your mind decide crowds weren't safe. Something formed a template, a blueprint, a pattern that your adult nervous system is still following. What happened in your childhood that made your brain choose this particular form of protection? The answer often begins in moments so small you wouldn't think they mattered. A child at a family gathering, 4 or 5 years old, sitting in a living room packed with relatives. The adults are loud, they're laughing, arguing, moving between rooms, their voices overlapping until the sound becomes a wall. The child feels something rising in their chest, something they don't have words for yet. They want to leave, but they can't explain why. They want everyone to be quiet, but they know that's not allowed. So they sit there, small and trapped, while their nervous system floods with stress hormones no one can see. An uncle ruffles their hair too roughly. An aunt pulls them into a hug that lasts too long. Someone asks them questions they don't know how to answer, while 10 people watch and wait. And in that moment, something is being written. A rule is being formed. Crowds equal overwhelm. Many people equal danger. Loud spaces equal loss of control. Or maybe it was different for you. Maybe you were the child who got lost in a department store, who wandered between racks of clothing calling for your mother while strangers walked past without noticing. Those 3 minutes felt like hours. Your heart was pounding so hard you thought everyone could hear it. When your mother finally found you, she was angry, not relieved, and you learned that your fear was somehow wrong, that you should have been braver, that being scared in a crowd was a failure of character. Or maybe you grew up in a chaotic household where there was never enough space, never enough quiet, never a moment when you could just breathe without someone needing something from you. Your bedroom became your refuge, the only place where the world wasn't pressing in from all sides. You learned early that safety meant being alone, that peace required separation, that you could only regulate your emotions when no one else was around. These patterns form before language, before memory, before you have any conscious ability to examine what's happening. A child's brain is building a map of the world, learning what's safe and what's dangerous, what helps and what hurts. And if overwhelm happened repeatedly without anyone helping you calm down, if no one taught you how to stay centered when life got loud, then your nervous system learned to do the only thing it could: remove you from the situation. Leave, escape, avoid. It's not a choice you made then, and it's not really a choice you're making now. It's an automatic response, a survival program running in the background of your consciousness, protecting you from a danger that may no longer exist, but still feels completely real. There's another layer here, something that runs even deeper. If you have what psychologists call an anxious attachment style, if you grew up never quite sure whether the people who were supposed to care for you would actually be there when you needed them, then crowds become especially threatening. Because your nervous system is already operating in a state of heightened alert, already scanning for signs of abandonment or rejection, already working overtime to ensure connection and safety. And in a crowd, you can't maintain that vigilance, you can't track everyone, you can't make sure people still see you, still remember you exist, still care, whether you stay or go. The anxiety that might be manageable one-on-one becomes unbearable when multiplied across dozens or hundreds of people. You're not just overwhelmed by the crowd itself, you're overwhelmed by your own hypervigilance, by the impossible task your nervous system has assigned itself. Your aversion to crowds isn't a personality quirk. It's not a random preference. It's an adult echo of a child's survival strategy. A strategy that once protected you but now quietly controls your life in ways you've stopped noticing. This childhood pattern doesn't just create discomfort in the moment, it shapes your entire adult identity, disguising itself as simple preference when it's actually something far more powerful. How does this early programming show up in your life today, dressed up as choice, when it's really old fear wearing new clothes? It shows up in the job you didn't apply for because it required attending weekly team meetings in a small conference room with 15 people. It shows up in the promotion you turned down because it meant working from the main office instead of your quiet corner desk. It shows up in the networking events you skip, the conferences you avoid, the professional opportunities that slip past, because they all require entering spaces where your nervous system sends alarm signals. You tell yourself you're just not interested, that those things aren't important to your career, that you prefer working independently anyway, and maybe that's partly true. But underneath the rationalization, there's a pattern running your decisions, and it's costing you more than you realize. It shows up in your relationships too, in ways that feel like preference, but function like avoidance. Your friend invites you to her wedding, and you genuinely want to celebrate with her, but the thought of the ceremony, the reception, the crowd of 200 guests makes your stomach clench. You say you'll try to make it, knowing you probably won't. Or you go but leave early, making up an excuse about not feeling well, which isn't entirely a lie because you don't feel well. Your body is screaming to escape. Or maybe you do stay, but you spend the entire time in a state of low-grade panic, counting down minutes until you can reasonably leave without seeming rude. Afterward, people describe you as distant, antisocial, someone who never seems to fully participate. They don't understand that you're not choosing distance. You're choosing survival, the only way your nervous system knows how. You've built entire systems around this aversion without calling it that. You order groceries online, not just because it's convenient, but because the thought of navigating a crowded supermarket on a Sunday afternoon feels genuinely unbearable. You work remotely when possible, and you've convinced yourself it's about productivity or work-life balance, which might be true. But it's also true that the open office plan at headquarters makes your skin crawl. You schedule appointments at odd times, early morning or late afternoon, to avoid peak crowds. You choose restaurants based on how busy they typically are, not how good the food is. You've become an expert at managing your environment, at controlling variables, at engineering your life around this single requirement: avoid crowds at all costs. And somewhere along the way, this pattern became identity. You started saying things like, "I'm just someone who hates crowds," or "I'm not a people person," or "I prefer my own company." These statements feel true, and they are true, but they're also a story you're telling to make sense of responses you never chose. You've crystallized a nervous system reaction into a personality trait, and now you can't tell where the authentic preference ends and the protective avoidance begins. Do you actually prefer quiet, intimate gatherings, or have you simply made peace with the only kind of socializing your system can tolerate? Do you genuinely enjoy solitude, or have you learned to find meaning in isolation because the alternative feels impossible? There's often a layer of shame here too, quiet and persistent. You watch other people thrive in environments that drain you, and you wonder what's wrong with you. Why can't you just relax? Why does something so ordinary for others require so much effort from you? You feel defective, broken, less than. You hide the extent of your discomfort because admitting it feels like confessing weakness. So you smile and say you're fine when you're not fine. You push through when your body is begging you to leave. You pretend the crowd doesn't bother you, even as every cell in your body is screaming for space. But here's what most people miss, what even you might not have noticed yet. The real reason you avoid crowds has nothing to do with the crowds themselves. The crowd is just a mirror, just a trigger, just the surface of something much deeper happening inside you. What if the crowd isn't the problem at all? The first thing to understand is that the goal isn't to force yourself to love crowds or to become someone who seeks out packed stadiums and bustling festivals. The goal is simply to stop being controlled by the fear of them, to expand your window of tolerance so that when crowds are unavoidable, or when an opportunity you genuinely want requires entering a crowded space, you're not held hostage by your nervous system's ancient programming. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about understanding your responses well enough that they stop dictating every choice you make. There's a concept in psychology called the window of tolerance, which describes the zone where you can experience stress or stimulation without becoming overwhelmed or shutting down. Some people have wide windows. They can handle intense environments, high stimulation, chaotic situations without losing their center. Other people have narrow windows. A little bit of stress pushes them quickly into overwhelm or collapse. Neither is better or worse. They're just different nervous system configurations. But windows can expand. With gentle, repeated exposure paired with tools for self-regulation, your system can learn that crowds don't actually threaten your survival, that you can experience discomfort without it escalating into panic, that you can remain yourself even when the environment is chaotic. The key word here is gentle. Flooding yourself, forcing yourself into intensely crowded situations before you're ready, doesn't teach your nervous system safety. It confirms danger. It tells your amygdala, "See, I was right. This is unbearable. We should never do this again." Real change happens at the edge of your comfort zone, not miles beyond it. Maybe you start with 5 minutes in a moderately busy bookstore during off-peak hours. Not Saturday afternoon when it's packed, but Tuesday morning when there are maybe 20 people scattered across the aisles. You go in, you notice what you feel, you breathe, you remind yourself that nothing bad is actually happening, and then you leave before the discomfort becomes overwhelming. You do this repeatedly, building evidence for your nervous system that crowds can be tolerated, that you can handle more than you believed. While you're in these situations, you need tools for regulation. Your body is responding to perceived threat, so you need to signal to your body that you're actually safe. This might mean focusing on your breath, slowing your exhale to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. It might mean grounding techniques, noticing 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. It might mean having a mantra, something simple like, "I am safe. This is temporary. I can leave whenever I choose." These aren't just positive thinking tricks. They're ways of communicating with the pre-verbal, reactive parts of your brain, giving them information that contradicts the danger signal. There's also the question of identity. You've probably spent years saying, "I'm someone who hates crowds," and that statement has become part of how you understand yourself. Letting go of it can feel like losing a piece of your identity, like you won't know who you are if you're not the person who avoids crowded places. But identity is more fluid than we think. You're not betraying yourself by expanding your capacity. You're not becoming someone else. You're becoming a fuller version of who you already are, someone with more options, more freedom, more choice about when to engage and when to retreat. This brings up an important distinction. Sometimes avoiding crowds is healthy boundary setting. Sometimes it's genuine preference. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to attend every event or accept every invitation or push yourself into situations that genuinely don't serve you. The question is whether you're choosing from a place of freedom or from a place of fear. Can you tell the difference? When you decline an invitation, is it because you authentically don't want to go, or because the thought of going triggers that old familiar panic? But there's one final truth about this that changes everything, something that reframes the entire experience. What if your sensitivity to crowds isn't actually a problem that needs solving? What if the thing you've spent years viewing as a weakness is actually a form of perception, a way of experiencing the world that notices what others miss? Your nervous system isn't broken because it responds intensely to crowds. It's responsive because it's sensitive, and sensitivity, when understood correctly, isn't a flaw. It's a different kind of intelligence. You feel the energy in a room before others consciously register it. You notice micro-expressions, shifts in tone, undercurrents of tension that pass beneath most people's awareness. You process information deeply, which means you also reach saturation more quickly. But that depth of processing is what allows you to understand complexity, to see patterns, to connect dots that others overlook. The people who feel deeply are the same people who sense deeply. A crowd overwhelms you precisely because you're taking in everything, because your system doesn't have the same filtering mechanism that allows others to tune out 90% of their environment. This isn't a deficit. It's a different way of being wired, and it comes with both costs and gifts. The cost is that you can't tolerate the same level of stimulation as people with less sensitive nervous systems. The gift is that you experience life with a richness and depth that many people never access. You're not missing out by preferring smaller, quieter environments. You're choosing the context where your particular form of awareness can actually function, where you can be present instead of just surviving. There's a cultural bias we need to name here. Western culture, particularly American culture, celebrates extroversion. It values people who are energized by large groups, who speak up in meetings, who network effortlessly, who seem to thrive in exactly the environments that drain you. And when you don't fit that template, when you need space and quiet and solitude to recharge, it's easy to feel like something is wrong with you. But the template itself is arbitrary. It's not universal truth. It's cultural preference mistaken for human nature. In other cultures, in other contexts, your qualities would be valued differently. The person who can sit in silence, who listens more than they speak, who prefers depth over breadth in their relationships, that person is often seen as wise, mature, grounded. The noise of constant stimulation isn't everyone's natural habitat, and it doesn't need to be yours. This raises an essential question. Are you healing a trauma response, or are you accepting an authentic preference? Sometimes the answer is both. Maybe your aversion to crowds was intensified by early experiences of overwhelm without support, and that part can heal. You can expand your capacity, build tools for regulation, learn that you're safe even when uncomfortable. But underneath that healing, there might still be a genuine preference for smaller, quieter spaces. And that preference doesn't need to be fixed or overcome. It's just information about how you're built, about the environments where you can be most fully yourself. You're not avoiding life by choosing intimate gatherings over massive parties. You're honoring your own wiring, creating conditions where you can actually connect instead of just endure. What if you don't need to change, but simply understand? What if your discomfort in crowds is your mind protecting something valuable, something that would be lost if you forced yourself to adapt to environments that fundamentally don't suit you? You're not broken. You're not less than. You're someone who experiences the world through a finely tuned instrument that requires different conditions to play its best music. And that's not a limitation. It's just the truth of who you are. Take a moment to notice where these patterns appear in your own life. Observe them without judgment, with curiosity instead of criticism. Awareness is the first step toward understanding, and understanding is what transforms reaction into choice. What should we explore next in the psychology of human behavior? Drop your ideas below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. What you're really reacting to in a crowd isn't the number of people or the volume of noise or even the physical discomfort of limited space. What you're reacting to is loss of control. In your daily life, you manage situations, you predict outcomes, you influence what happens through careful attention and strategic behavior. But in a crowd, all of that collapses. You can't control where people move, or what they do, or how close they get to you. You can't manage the flow of events or determine when things start and stop. You're suddenly subject to forces larger than yourself, swept along in a current you didn't create and can't direct. And for someone whose sense of safety depends on maintaining control, this feeling is intolerable. It's not just uncomfortable, it's existentially threatening. There's another dimension to this, something even more uncomfortable to face. In a crowd, you become insignificant. You're one person among hundreds, and the truth of your replaceability becomes impossible to ignore. Your thoughts don't matter here. Your preferences don't matter. You could disappear, and the crowd would continue exactly as it was, uninterrupted and unbothered. For people who've built their identity around being special, being seen, being important to the people around them, this anonymity feels like a kind of death. It strips away the story you tell yourself about who you are and replaces it with the bare fact of your ordinariness. You're not the main character here. You're not even a supporting player. Your background, scenery, utterly forgettable. And your ego, that fragile construction of self-importance, cannot tolerate this reality. Then there's the vulnerability. In a crowd, you can't maintain the carefully constructed version of yourself that you present to the world. You can't manage impressions or control how others perceive you. Your mask slips because you don't have the energy to hold it in place, while simultaneously managing all the sensory input and emotional regulation required just to stay present. Maybe you're someone who prides yourself on being calm, collected, always in control of your emotions. But in a crowd, that control evaporates, and suddenly you're exposed. People might see you anxious, uncomfortable, not as put together as you'd like to appear, or maybe you're someone who needs to be liked, who works hard to make others comfortable, who reads the room and adjusts your behavior accordingly. But in a crowd, you can't read 200 people simultaneously. You can't adjust for everyone. You can't make sure everyone likes you or thinks well of you or even notices you exist. The strategy that makes you feel safe in smaller settings becomes impossible to execute. And without it, you feel defenseless. There's a particular paradox that happens in crowds that makes all of this worse. You're simultaneously invisible and hyper-visible. No one is paying attention to you specifically, but you feel watched nonetheless. You're acutely aware that you exist in other people's fields of vision, that you might be taking up too much space or moving too slowly, or doing something that draws unwanted attention. This double bind, being both ignored and observed, creates a cognitive dissonance your mind struggles to resolve. Are you safe because you're unseen, or are you in danger because you're exposed? Your nervous system can't decide, so it chooses both, flooding you with conflicting signals that leave you exhausted and confused. Is it really the crowd you fear? Or is it the loss of control the crowd represents? Are you avoiding the noise outside, or are you avoiding the internal chaos that crowds force you to feel? The crowd becomes a container for everything you don't want to face about yourself. Your need for control, your fear of insignificance, your inability to maintain your protective strategies when overwhelmed. Understanding this is powerful, but understanding alone doesn't free you from the pattern. So how do you begin to change this, if change is even what you want?